I leave for 2 seconds and we got this. Hey everybody, we're gonna get started here in just a couple of minutes. Just finishing setting some lighting up and stuff, and we'll get started with our topic. I'm really interested to get into today's topic, which is like megachurches and like Joel Osteen is the first one. Osteen or Osteen? I think it's Osteen. I don't know. I think of him first when it comes to megachurches for some reason. So, weird. Anyways, kick back, relax. Okay. Let's get it going. Let's get her going. Alright. And 3, and 2, and 1, and big face. And hello, everybody. My name is Jan Erickson. Here is my Hyperion streaming channel, essentially, now that we've turned into. But I'm excited for tonight's topic. We're going to get into the megachurches, and then obviously the first thing that pops into my head is like Joel Osteen. Is it Osteen or Osteen? Because I hear people pronounce it both ways. But anyways, oh, thank you, Mark. Yes, we are a little short on moderators tonight, but that's fine. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. We have Tyler, good to see you. Lisa, good to see you. Claudia, hello, Meta Lisa. Paul Cherry, Cassidy Hope. Let's see. Mistress Angelica, where is my mouse? Let's see, we got Lisa, we got Velveteers, we got, who am I missing? Renaissance Fairy, always good to see you. Heretical Response, hello. That's pretty much. All right. So let's dive right into it. How many of you are familiar with megachurches? I definitely haven't been to one before. The church I went to was relatively small. However, I feel like in Mormonism, when they do like their conference like weeks and stuff, it rather does get like a mega church. So I think like the biggest thing about mega churches is obviously in the name is that they hold a fuck ton of people. There's a ton of people in mega churches. Like they seat up to like 2,000 people at some points. It's like a stadium for church. Hey, what's up, Zero? Hello, Lisa Grace. What was I looking up earlier? I lost my mouse again. I hate that. Okay, hold on. I have to do that thing where I navigate without the cursor, the mouse pointy part, and I have to fix this. There we go. Getting much better at that. How many mega churches are there in the United States? There is apparently more than 1,500 megachurches, according to the Hartford Institute for Religious Research, which defines them as very active Protestant congregations with an average of 2,000 or more weekend attendees. That is some serious churching. I think Joel Osteen is like televangelist or something. Now, I don't know jack shit about these, like, splitting hairs of, like, religious terms. I mean, there's still even, not religious terms, just, like, different kinds of religions, because even within Mormonism, there's a ton of, like, branches of Mormonism. They'd like to think there isn't, but there is. There's, like, 80 of them. Database of megachurches in the U.S. Please note, we do not focus primarily on numbers and receive many contradictory reports. Well, then what the hell is this? What are we reading this for? Baptist, Calvary, Church of God, Disciples of Christ, Evangelical, Fellowship of Christian stuff, Lutherans, Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, Salvation Army. Oh no. There's kind of, it's not like a mega church. Well, I mean, it's a mega church or not. So, I mean, it's kind of like a mega church in my area, but it's not, I don't know. I wouldn't say it packs very many people. Certainly not. Okay, let's start with like the shorter one, and then I think we might do corporate casket. Open link.
Compared to some televangelists, Joel Osteen has kept himself relatively free of scandals, but he's far from squeaky clean. Osteen has plenty of critics who are quick to point out that the powerful preacher man is not without his controversies. Let's look at the troubled history of Joel Osteen. It's easy to assume that condemning neo-Nazis would be the easiest possible thing for a person to do, especially when said person is a prominent religious leader who...
Wait a minute! Question threw me off.
very pointedly preaches a message of hope and love. However, reality is often strange and disappointing. In August 2017, a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia turned into a terrifying event when brawls erupted between the...
I remember this. These silly tiki boys. Why tiki torches? Come on now. Come on. Hideous.
Far-right marchers and the counter-protesters. The situation ended in tragedy when a neo-Nazi drove a car into a crowd of people opposing them, killing one person and injuring 19 others. Several more were injured in the various clashes during the event. According to the Christian Post, many religious leaders were quick to condemn the white supremacist actions.
Yeah, to save their asses.
Joel Osteen, on the other hand, chose a different route. He initially remained quiet, but once his approach started drawing criticism, he explained his views in a Facebook post that, to many, was no better than his initial silence. One of the biggest challenges we all face is getting along with people because everyone is different. We have different personalities, different temperaments. He then went on to
Yeah, that's a very loose thing to say.
Explain his views that someone doesn't have to engage when they see another person doing something wrong. Unsurprisingly, Osteen's pacifist rhetoric didn't go over too well, as many people reportedly felt that he was downplaying violent racism and outright murder.
Yeah, that is downplaying it quite a bit. It's just, well, I don't know. Some people just don't get along now. They just throw little tizzy fits, you know? Like, this is not a tizzy fit. Like, this is literal neo-Nazism, which we all know well and true. What
While
it's like
implying
to
that
face that
pro-Nazi
shit.
sentiments are just as valid and acceptable as anything else. In late August 2017, the Houston area was thoroughly wrecked by Hurricane
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember this, too. I hope this music is good. No, it should be good.
Harvey. As World Vision reported, the disaster directly and indirectly killed an estimated 103 people, flooded a third of the USA's fourth largest city, and caused roughly $125 billion in damage. It was a difficult time for the area, and like any good religious leader, Joel Osteen had some words of wisdom and solace to offer, with the preacher taking to Twitter to write, "Jesus promises us peace that passes understanding. That's peace when it doesn't make sense."
Yeah, but you got a megachurch, dude.
There was just one minor problem. As the New York Post points out, Osteen had plenty more to give than just social media platitudes. Namely, the Lakewood Church, a 16,800-seat arena-turned megachurch that was very near to downtown Houston, and which could easily be used to house a significant portion of the many Houstonians in need of a temporary shelter. Several people immediately...
I mean, even if you didn't like it, you think the man would house those people just for the sheer, like, PowerPoints, you know, just so that people can look at him in a better eye, but can't even do it for, like, the sheer manipulation of that. It just kind of goes to show you the kind of, this is, like, ew, I don't like the, at least with, crazier, smaller pastors and things, I don't know, they're much more socially manipulative, whereas this is just, like, a lot more so with money and power. It makes me think of, in Mormonism, how the church leaders, the way they kind of get put up in very nice apartments, we're talking like penthouse style apartments and stuff, and there's always this argument like, well, they don't take any more than a modest check, you know, for living expenses, but they live like rich elite. And not to mention, they're still promoting a system that requires its members to pay 10% of their income to the church to be truly worthy. And so if somebody's already financially struggling, that's pretty shitty of somebody in that status to ask for. And then to turn around and be like, well, I'm just taking a modest bit from it.
Immediately pointed out that Osteen's giant facility hadn't opened its doors to the many people in need, despite the fact that it appeared to be undamaged by the flood. As entertainment publicist Danny Deraney put it on Twitter, "Open your church. You have taken so much money away from your people to live like a king. It's the least you could do." Others echoed the sentiment, and Osteen ultimately was pressured into opening the Lakewood Church for the victims of Hurricane Harvey. But as CNN reports,
shouldn't be
the whole
pressured
thing
into
was
that,
a huge
though.
PR nightmare. Soon after people called him out for not immediately offering sanctuary in his house of worship, Osteen tweeted, "Victoria and I care deeply about our fellow Houstonians. Lakewood's doors are open and we are receiving anyone who needs shelter." Unfortunately, the Lakewood Church had already given a torrent of reasons for keeping its doors closed. They'd said that the building was severely flooded and inaccessible, and that they weren't really closed, they were just waiting until other shelters had reached their capacity. While the comments were backed up by photos that showed floodwater in parts of the facility, the situation didn't exactly make Osteen look good.
We were waiting for the right time. Really, Lakewood is always open. We just didn't necessarily have staff here the night that...
And when I realized I was in deep shit, that's when I realized it's just the right time. We were just waiting for that.
It flooded out here.
A columnist on CNN blasted the televangelist's excuses, and sites like The Inquisitor and TMZ openly questioned the veracity of the church's flooding claims. Joel Osteen himself quite naturally took the brunt of the bad PR storm, but soon addressed the situation. He explained that apart from safety concerns, the city hadn't asked the church to become a shelter, so they didn't immediately have the...
Oh, come on. Are you kidding me? It goes back to, like, medieval times. Like, I don't know. You let them have sanctuary, that sort of jazz. Like, that's ridiculous.
Resources to start helping scores of
Hey, MC Heavyset. Good to see you.
people, showing just how
Mark says, evangelical. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that word. Evangelical. I don't know why. Evangelical churches teach something commonly called the prosperity gospel. The idea that riches descend upon the best people by virtue of their faith, and the usually unstated corollary victim shaming of the poor. Yeah. Mormonism does something like that very nastily. Mormonism, I think right now, at this point, they've been careful to go back and reword things. I'm not sure if the original script is still there, but at what point there's like a lot of emphasis, like, if you were born with like as anything but a white person, it's because you lived an evil pre-life or something like that. They have this weird, nasty sort of description about how being white, is white and delightsome, they said, and to be anything else is to be in sin. It's just like, it's really, really awkward. These are horrible systems. Like, these are horrible things. These are horrible ideas that it's just so shallow. It's a very shallow view. And these are people that deal with the concepts of eternity in an afterlife, Don't you know?
passionate he is, though. In his first service after the disaster, he also advised the victims of the hurricane to forget what he called their, quote, poor old me mentality. As CBS News...
Excuse me? I think a hurricane using all your shit and almost dying is a perfect time to be like, oh my god, this sucks. Poor me. Yeah, pour all this shit. Fuck this shit. You kidding me? Oh my lord. Even in Hyperianism, where we're like, take the pain and transform it into power and work with that and stuff, through struggle to the stars, we don't mean love it. Every time that something horrible happens to you, you don't have to be like, oh yes, this is fun. I mean, I sure the hell am not. I complain the whole time, through my inner star actualization. I complain every step of the way. Yeah, you can complain. You can do. That's where it's encouraged to do something with the pain. You process the pain, you feel the pain, you process it, and then you transform it into something that helps you grow and become more. What's the word? Actualized.
Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston is comfortably the biggest megachurch in America, with an estimated 43,500 weekly visitors as of 2018. Knowing this, it's easy to assume that Osteen's religious message must be particularly strong and comforting. According to the Lakewood Church website, Joel Osteen's massive church indeed bases its beliefs on the central tenet that the Bible is from God and entirely...
Whoa! We just got... Okay, someone needs to warn me before we get, smacked with these amazing, spectacular graphics.
Without error. However, according to the Houston Chronicle, Osteen doesn't actually refer to the fundamental matters of religion all that much. His self-admitted style is that of an encourager, and he rarely dwells on Christianity's many mysteries or doctrines.
I am young, I am beautiful, I am attractive. Remember, what follows the I am is going to come.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Saturday Night Live thing where the guy's doing the self-esteem lessons. What is that? Who is that called? It's he's like, and gosh darn it, people like me. People like me. Yes, that totally reminds me of this. Stuart Smalley. Stuart Smalley daily affirmations. Oh my lord.
I deserve good things. I am entitled to my share of happiness. I refuse to beat myself up. I am an attractive person. I am fun to be with.
You see what I mean?
Daily affirmation with
Stuart Smalley.
Stuart Smalley is a caring nurturer, a member of several 12-step programs, but not a licensed therapist.
I'm going to do a terrific show today, and I'm going to help people because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
People like me. Yeah, that's totally it. That's literally like what we just heard.
Remember, what follows the I am.
Do that. Christianity's many mysteries or doctrines.
I am young, I am beautiful, I am attractive. Remember, what follows the I am is going to come looking for you.
Instead, he pitches a creed that tells people to ignore the bad things in life and to focus on the...
Gang, we figured it out. We figured it out. Joel Osteen is really Stuart Smalley of Megachurches.
good. As he stated in one of his sermons, God wouldn't have allowed it if it was going to keep you from your destiny. Shake off a victim mentality and have a victor mentality. This
Just stop being a victim.
motivational speaker manner doesn't sit too well with some of Osteen's critics. Pete Evans, a private
You should have thought of that before you became poor.
investigator specializing in the misconduct of churches and televangelists, has a pretty clear opinion of the substance behind the Lakewood church pastor's message, saying, "He's a pitchman, selling congeniality and empty promises in the name of God. All you get is an empty box of hope for a better life someday." Since he's a televangelist at the head of a sizable megachurch, it's easy to assume that Joel Osteen has a fairly glorious bank account at his disposal. And you'd be right. Wealth estimations...
Oh, Jesus Lord. Why does any, that is, to have millions and millions and millions, way more, your rich elite status.
Site Celebrity Net Worth guesstimates
Is he a bit... How much?
Osteen's net worth at no less than $100 million,
Oh, that's not... Well...
while the Financial Times goes with a rather more conservative $60 million. It's still an immeasurable pile of dough by almost any standard, especially that of a man of God.
So do you make any
But he's not quite billionaire status. That's where I'm like, no! The way that churches make money is insane. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. How much money do they pay to be baptized?
apologies for your grand piano?
I really don't, Oprah. We just feel like this is God's blessings.
As the Houston Chronicle
Oh, Oprah Winfrey. It's so nice to be here with you, Oprah Winfrey, on your one-of-a-kind, world-known show. It's just a blessing.
reports, Osteen's wealth has drawn criticism from scholars and watchdog groups. Carl Truman, professor of church history at the Westminster Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania and a pastor himself, doesn't hide his opinion that Osteen's pockets seem to be a little on the deep side for a preacher. As Truman says, "There's always the question of how much money is too much for a pastor to earn. When you're looking at his lavish private lifestyle, I'd say that's too much." Osteen's lifestyle indeed seems luxurious, judging by the way he and his wife...
Let's see, Renaissance Fairy says, but Joel writes books, that's why he is rich. One of his followers told you that. I mean, if you want to write books and sell books and, get rich off of that, fine. But it's this guy's trying to be a specific moral icon to people. Trying to be this specific kind of moral leader in which he's not even helping anybody in the least bit. Coming out trying to lead people with a fart and a piece of string.
Victoria reportedly live in a 17th...
It is. This is a very capitalistic, religion combination. It's creeping me out. It's totally creeping me out. Weird mega churches. This guy's a vampire.
1,000 square foot mansion with a value of $10.7 to $12 million. To be fair, while some scholars think he's way out of line with his personal possessions, there's no evidence that he's misappropriating church funds. In fact, Pete Harris, private investigator and 20-year veteran of church misconduct investigations, specifically notes that Osteen doesn't appear to break any laws. The bulk of Joel Osteen's personal income.
Why does Joel Osteen also, for some reason, and this is purely random, have like freaking like a little bit of like a Martin Short look? I don't know what it is.
Comes from his books, and as the Houston Chronicle reports, he is
I feel like Martin Short should play Joel Osteen in a movie.
a highly talented marketing machine. When he's on his home turf at the Lakewood Church, he doesn't solicit donations or promote his books all that much. However, he has a traveling sermon event called the Night of Hope, and when he takes it on the road, the gloves come off. The admission fee is $15 per person, but that's just the beginning.
You have to pay to go to church?
Tables are stacked with books and merchandise that ranges from clothes and tote bags to journals and audio tapes. Special prizes are available to those who pledge enough money, and
Oh my lord, this is not having a simple bake sale in the church parking lot. This is insanity.
donation requests and advertisements for Osteen-themed radio channels, social media, and even apps are everywhere. Osteen often has book signing events in the same cities where the Night of Hope takes place, and though the two events aren't marketed together, his involvement in one tends to drum up hype for the other, and there's plenty of follower overlap. The Night of Hope events themselves aren't necessarily huge moneymakers, as they reportedly turned a loss in 2017. However, Blunt says this is covered from the church's budget, which comes largely from donations, and Osteen still gets a huge amount of exposure, which translates to personal benefit through book sales. This is no small backwoods business either. As of 2018, Osteen has preached to a sold-out Madison Square Garden no less than 7 times.
Interesting.
In recent years, any famous person with a public affinity for religion has faced a considerable risk of running into Kanye West.
Oh, yeah, now we've really gone off the deep end. Kanye West is insane.
A man who's been so very much into religion lately. He's also fond of religious events he calls his Sunday services, and as the Los Angeles Times reports, in November 2019, he took the stage at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in this capacity. What happened for the next 20 minutes was markedly different from your average sermon. West, who CNN notes has battled mental health issues in the past, acted as Osteen.
Paul Cherry says his net worth, according to Forbes, is $40 million. Yeah, not quite billionaire status, but it's not. Yeah, churches are bad. Dang, just the way they operate.
Osteen's special guest. Playing the part of an interviewer, Osteen asked West questions about his work, youth, and relationship with the divine. The artist answered like only Kanye West can, in a stream of consciousness style that seemed to cast West himself in a borderline prophetic role, waging war against the devil and acting as God's mouthpiece. He said
Yeah, deranged, delusional.
that the devil has stolen all the good musical artists, but fortunately, the greatest artist that God has ever created is now working for him. And because things weren't peculiar enough, he then started claiming that strip clubs promote sex trafficking, and that Christians are not treated well by the society at large.
That's, yeah. Society at large is not being treated well by Christianity lately. Have you seen the Christian nationalism that is overturning perfectly good things?
Or Kanye. Joel Osteen's detractors have criticized him for preaching the prosperity gospel, which refers to a school of preaching that focuses heavily on the notion that if you're devout enough, God will reward you with wealth and health.
If I want to believe God for a $65 million plane, you cannot stop me. You cannot stop me from dreaming.
The prosperity gospel was made infamous by equally
But if you can believe in God and get that plane, yeah, you'd still go for it.
infamous televangelists like Tammy Faye and Jim Baker, and many see it as a cynical way to lure in
I want to look up some old retro people.
weak and poor supporters with promises of faith-delivered riches.
Who told you you can't accomplish your dreams?
It doesn't help that tithing, which is giving a part of your income to the church on a regular basis, is often involved. According to the Financial Times, several of Lakewood Church's devout members do this. Osteen's website has stated that, as children of God, we are overcomers and more than conquerors, and God intends for each of us to experience the abundant life He has in store for us. Some might indeed think this sounds like classic prosperity gospel.
Look at that hair. Wow.
Nonetheless, Osteen is quick to distance himself from the sort of televangelist who asks for handouts. In a 2012 interview with Oprah Winfrey, he said,
I'm not asking them for money on television. I'm not trying to, don't try to be slick. I try to be sincere and all that. Just try to be who we are.
Joel Osteen is a convincing, charismatic presence whose public persona is smiling, suave, and immaculately dressed. It's quite difficult to imagine the pastor committing any sort of social blunder. Yet as a Christian
I'm sorry, anybody who smiles like that all the time is most definitely up to no good.
Post reports, some of his fans felt that's exactly what happened in 2017 when his son Jonathan graduated from the University of Texas. The University of Texas at Austin is famous for its Longhorns football team, which in turn is famous for the Hook 'em Horns. This traditional Longhorn hand signal is common at the university, but it also bears a considerable resemblance to the Devil Horns gesture, as popularized by legendary metal vocalist Ronnie James Dio. And so it came to be that 2 generations of Osteens posed for a picture while flashing the Hook 'em Horns. As CBS Austin reported, when the televangelist posted the image on Twitter, people immediately started accusing him of using the devil sign, with some suggesting that he should have used a more befitting sign, such as plain old thumbs up. Ironically enough, the Austin American-Statesman notes that a thumbs up at the University of Texas would probably have gone down a lot worse than the...
Oh, Renaissance Fairy says they do have a YouTube channel and you can super chat, and they do ask. Dang. Zero. I think demons have a permanent grin like that. Yeah.
Horn sign, seeing as it's the sign of the Texas A&M University, a traditional rival of the Longhorns. Fortunately for Osteen, this particular faux pas has so far failed to topple the Lakewood Church. When your organization is large enough, there's always the chance that someone working there gets involved in some problematic business, and when you're the face of the organization, it's suddenly very much your problem. According to Click2 Houston, this was the case for Joel Osteen in the Lakewood Church, when the pastor found himself attached to an unfortunate lawsuit by a family who claimed that their 18-month-old daughter was injured during a church service in May 2014. According to the lawsuit, the family was sitting on the church pew before, as the lawsuit stated,
when an usher grabbed the child's safety seat she was in and threw the seat off the pew, the child landing face first on the floor.
The fall...
What? What did I just hear? I can't. No, I don't. I have to keep
was
going.
said to have injured the girl rather seriously.
No.
The family said the incident traumatized them so badly that they actually ended up leaving Texas. Since the church representative wasn't named, Osteen was the main person the lawsuit mentioned by name. The Lakewood Church said there were no witnesses to back up the family's story and that they considered the whole thing to be a lie. Nevertheless, Radar Online reports that in 2016, the church ended up settling the case for $15,000. Check out one of our new
Everybody
videos
do your
right
devil
here.
horns.
Plus, even more
thing.
grunge videos about your favorite televangelists are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the...
I kind of like that. I want to check out their channel, though, before I subscribe to them, because I don't know what this channel is about, but I did like this video. It's the first one I've seen by them. But anyways, we'll get into some of the corporate casket. It's brand new, and if we run out of time, then perhaps you guys can just like finish it yourselves, or we'll finish it on Friday maybe, or Wednesday. I don't know. Let us load this up, and then I'll jump in the chat for a bit. Open link. Thank you. So yeah, interesting. So what I'm saying, it's not really, I mean, that is quite a lot of money. There's obviously people out there with much more money than that, making money off of doing much more horrible things, but why is this necessary? Why are people like this necessary? This man is not helping anybody actually realize who they are deep down inside, which is a monad, like an eternal thing that's not governed by any sort of external creator god, like the Sky Dad god. Like, there's no Sky Dad. This is very important for humanity to get to this point where we drop that. And perhaps it can still be belief in that not really belief, just a better understanding in an archetypal way, people would probably still practice it, but it would have to be like much different, much more rationally understood, and not in any way a sort of belief system in some sort of God. So, yeah, stuck in a toxic, sort of trapped in this reality tunnel. No, Sky Daddy. No, Daddy, no!
Hope is hard to come by these days. Mental health in the U.S. plummeted when the pandemic hit, and between inflation...
I think they're doing...
war, mass shootings, and a whole host of other things, it can be hard to find happiness in things, whether they be large or small. Maybe you find comfort escaping in a book or hanging out with friends. Or maybe you find comfort in the idea that maybe there's something bigger than you out there that's watching out for you.
Yeah.
If the latter's the case, you might go to church to learn about God. Well, if you're one of roughly 45,000 or so members of the Lakewood Church in Houston, that means the person you'll be learning from is the famous televangelist Joel Osteen. For those who claim to love him, they say it's because he's charismatic and his message is all about hope.
Hope. And doggone it, people like me.
Osteen and his wife even host live events called Night of Hope, packing stadiums full of tens of thousands of people. The Lakewood Megachurch itself was once a sports stadium before Joel Osteen Ministries bought it in 2003. For years now, Joel's audience has grown to the point of having a global reach. If you ask him himself how he's done it, he'll admit that he isn't really preaching about a religion, but about real-world troubles and how to live a good life. It's our core message that God's for you. He's got a good plan for your life.
No. God is not for me. I've tried it. I don't dabble in that. And as for his plan, he can have it back. Thanks, but no, but thanks. No, but thanks. Excuse me?
That you can let go of the past, you can overcome an addiction, you can have great relationships.
You can have all that without God. I think that's what's so weird about humanity is a bunch of us are just stuck in this mindset and this attitude that we cannot possibly take care of ourselves or solve our own problems or do anything to grow, evolve, or change or anything like that. It's so ridiculous. It has to be God. It has to be this. It has to be that. It's like, I get there's plenty of scary times in your life. And people start to pray. But what we really need to start doing is start a dialogue or some sort of conversation with a version of yourself that you're not quite yet, but you know is possible in a realistic way. A more realistic higher self. I don't like saying higher self per se because it kind of has this weird new agey feel to it, but I don't mean that in like the new age way, as in like there's literally like an extra special spirit that's like you, but it's your higher self. It's like, no, there's a version of you that is able to rationalize, take care of yourself, all this, that, and the other. It's just you got to start accessing it, sort of like slowly flexing a muscle and like getting into that, strengthening that area of yourself more and more. And, you know, I find when I do this in areas in my life, like at work or maybe in social situations and things like that, or just even personally dealing with personal issues in my head, I find thinking about my higher self in that way, I do slowly eventually become that. It's like, it's almost like I'm not quite faking it because it's something within me that I'm tapping into, but in a way, I'm kind of like faking it till I make it that way. Osteen.
It's a message of hope, living a life of faith, and being happy about where you are, Joel says in an interview. And Joel's not wrong, as that's truly what his message is about. I watched one of his sermons from earlier this year called Choose to Be Happy, and in it, Joel is really more of a motivational speaker than a preacher, or at least by my definition and opinion. It's almost strange to watch someone that claims to be a Christian preacher not really even mention the Bible and say that they don't want to be religious. Like, you're the head of a church, isn't being religious kind of part of the gig? Well, apparently not for Osteen, and not for quite a few televangelists.
Then it's a business.
Actually. This motivational style of speaking is something that I've heard before, even if I'm not sure that it's ever sounded so generic. Throughout the sermon, Joel said that you should wake up with the attitude of being happy in a dozen different ways.
Think more happy thoughts.
He insists, don't dwell on the negative.
Yeah, Mark. I feel like there's a lot of like other Christians that do not like this man or his wife or anything. I think I've even seen him referred to as like the most evil Christian ever, which is funny.
Maybe I'm jaded, but to me this just kind of sounds like a motivational Pinterest quote being recited on loop for a half an hour. Like, if this helps you, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But to me, it's just really hollow. Yeah. However, Osteen's characterization as a motivational speaker with a religious bent does seem intentional. It makes him seem more accessible. It means that his message is less likely to offend and that he can draw in larger crowds.
So it's like he's just trying to be more palatable with it, I guess.
After all, who doesn't want to hear that everything is just going to get better? Who doesn't want to have a motivational speaker tell you that God has a plan for you every single week? Without a doubt, there is something reassuring about that to a lot of folks. Success argues that this is...
There's no plans. There's no plans. You make your plan. You make your plan. That's the point of being able to evolve, is you decide what you need to do. You make your plan.
By design. He doesn't say Satan or evil, but instead says things like the enemy, so that his audience can attribute their struggle, no matter what it is, to this enemy role. He also intentionally avoids saying hell or sin whenever possible. Osteen would have his audience believe that he was simply thrown into this role and is still figuring it out. His parents, John and Dodie, started Lakewood in the 1950s.
See, this is what I probably should have looked up.
And 30 years later, Joel told his parents that he wanted to start to broadcast the sermons on television. Their audience grew despite Joel's father being a bit more traditional, and Joel learned just about everything there was to know from the lighting, the sound, and behind-the-scenes work of televangelism.
Andy says if we're living God's plan, we lose our free will, right? See, that's like the whole weird fallacy of free will. It's not actual free will. It's just God's free will. Does that make sense? And I don't mean like his exactly, but it's just like his plan for that. So it's so stupid in Mormonism. It's like God has this plan for you to return to heaven, and you can do it of your own free will. But if you don't choose to come back of your own free will, then you will go to hell. It's like, okay, how the fuck is that actual free will? It's not.
Daddy, I'm not a preacher. You preach and I'll make you look good, is how Joel put it.
Interesting.
Then in 1999, his father became ill and Joel agreed to take over for him one Sunday. That 1 week turned into having to take over completely as his father unfortunately passed away. Joel states, I did my best. I didn't
Then why couldn't he have just found somebody else to do that part?
know what I was doing. Heck, I barely do now. But is that entirely true? Joel is heavily involved with pre-production in his shows, and he knows how important production value is to the people that watch at home. He tells Success how important preparation, lighting, and sound are, and he purposefully avoids words that might alienate someone. So is he actually a motivational speaker flying by the seat of his pants, or is he more intentional and perhaps even sinister underneath?
So today, talking about Joel Osteen.
Being done, it's important to call that out and speak up for what's right, especially when you have a large audience looking to you for guidance. Osteen, however, doesn't seem to get this message at all, and allow me to go on a bit of a rant for a moment to explain. Now, many of you may remember that in 2017, a Unite the Right rally took place in Charlottesville. It had been organized by a pro-white activist to protest the planned removal of a Confederate statue. The white nationalists were chanting things like, "White Lives Matter, Jews will not replace us," and "Blood and Soil."
Isn't that cute?
Violence broke out, and neo-Nazi James Fields Jr. drove his car into a group of people, killing Heather Heyer and injuring 19 others. This was a despicable, condemnable act.
Yeah. Of immense proportion.
Yet, not everyone was so quick to denounce it. Trump infamously said that there's been violence on both sides at the time, whereas others said,
I hate that crap. Oh, there is violence on both sides, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if you say that crap, it shows a complete lack of understanding for the bigger picture.
It was domestic terrorism and should be addressed as such. Many Christian leaders did speak up to condemn this and white supremacism as a whole. According to The Atlantic, many people within the church are frustrated with what they see as passivity in the face of bigotry. In the same way that Muslims are often expected to take responsibility for those on their fringes who commit violent acts of terrorism, people demanded that white Christians account for the violent racists who claim to share their faith. I can wholeheartedly understand this sentiment. If you're a Christian leader, then it's part of your duty to teach that white supremacy is not what Christianity is.
Right.
The head of the political arm of the Southern Baptist Convention tweeted,
Except for, that's kind of always been a part of it, but hey.
So-called alt-right white supremacist ideologies are anti-Christ and satanic to the core, and other megachurch pastors joined him. Some of these pastors agreed that these acts are in fact evil and were not afraid to call it out as such. But Joel Osteen doesn't use the word evil, remember? Well, here is, and I quote, Joel Osteen's Facebook post response to this event. "One of the biggest challenges we all face is getting along with people because everyone is different. We have different personalities, different temperaments. We come from different backgrounds. When somebody doesn't agree with us or not doing what we like, it's easy to get in conflict with them, to argue, to try to straighten them out, to prove our point. No, you have to be the bigger person. Just because they're doing wrong doesn't mean you have to engage."
I'm sorry, what? So, what? So if somebody is doing something that is obviously violent and, really tearing at people in awful ways. Like, I mean, that was literally a neo-Nazi party. Those guys are assholes. They just love destruction. That's all they want. So to say, like, oh, you shouldn't engage, it's like, yeah, you kind of have to. You have to engage and stop these sorts of hate groups and these shitty systems that take advantage of people. Absolutely. So yeah, that's a very, what a terrible thing to say.
And this is just hard to put into words. Because not only was Joel delayed in making any kind of statement, but this was all he had to say. Now, I feel pretty confident that I could end the episode here because I feel like this...
Yeah, totally, Mark. Joel is soft selling. Yeah, worst political extremist ideologically driven violence as something we should gently float above without judgment. Like, oh, whoops, neo-Nazis. Oh, just leave them be. And remember, doggone it, people like me.
Is enough of a reason to stop supporting someone when they can't even call out plain and simple white supremacy to their audience. And from what I've seen, this is where the remark ends. I've yet to see any apology or addition to this statement. The reason why I absolutely loathe this statement is because even if Joel didn't want to alienate or hurt anyone by being this passive, that's exactly what he's done. Yeah. He's standing by and effectively telling white supremacists that, in his book, they just have a different personality. It diminishes...
Get a new one.
The horrific acts, and it minimizes the death and destruction that occurs by white supremacist hands. White supremacists who claim to share your faith, Osteen.
Yeah, Paul Cherry, when they try to blur or cross the line of church and states and try blocking things such as stem cell research. Yeah, overturning a Roe versus Wade, all that stuff. Christianity has a major hand in how people are being governed right now. I mean, this is a Christian nationalist company. It is a company. This whole country is just one big fucking Christian nationalist company.
I couldn't agree more with the comment that's currently at the top that drips with sarcasm. So glad nobody engaged Hitler back in World War II or the Confederacy when they tore apart our country to keep humans enslaved.
Yep. Hitler's plan didn't work for a reason.
Now, make no mistake, what happened at Charlottesville was a hateful, evil act, but Osteen won't stand up against it. He doesn't even use the word evil. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away, and when you're the leader of a faith-based organization, you need to stand for something. So you've got two options here. Grow a fucking spine and stand for something, or stop filing as a church and religious organization and just file as a motivational speaker seminar instead. But anyway,
yeah,
while this
like
is
everybody
probably
else.
one of the things I find most upsetting about
it's just this be a speaker at a seminar like all the other fucking douchebags at the conference centers.
As it turns out, I'm not alone in that. His attempts at being inoffensive have been offensive to Christians at times too. Back in 2005, Osteen made an appearance on Larry King and stated that he didn't know if Muslims and atheists or people of other faiths were going to heaven. A caller called him out on this and told him that the Bible says the only way to heaven is through Jesus, and if he were really a Christian, shouldn't he believe that too?
Yeah.
Once again, Osteen gave a little bit of a wishy-washy approach to this and said that only God can judge a person's heart. Not long after this, Osteen did make an apology on his church's website, insisting that he never intended to sow doubt among his followers and quoted scripture insisting that yes, he agreed that Jesus is the only way to heaven. The Christian
Okay. Yeah, and then the only way to Jesus is by giving me your money.
Seemed upset by this and has written that Osteen denies preaching a watered-down version of the gospel despite refusing to talk about sin, hell, and things of that nature. But is that really so bad? Well, to me, this comes across like Osteen is saying one thing in public and then another in private. That's not to say that his church's website is private, but it comes across as hypocritical. Like, he's so determined not to offend anyone on Larry King that he won't take a firm stance on anything, but then if someone's upset, he backpedals. It's strange. It's a weird position to take. On the one hand, it could be because Joel really does want to talk about God's love and nothing more. Maybe that's how he believes he can help people. On the other hand, given how he's watered down pure racism and hatred to nothing but someone being different, I'm a little less inclined to give Osteen the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, I think he has another motivator.
Tell us. What? Tell us.
Money.
Yep. I knew she was going to say money. I knew she was going to say money. Like, it's bad for business to make any, like, defining statements that would, ruin your... Because, Lord Jesus, neo-Nazis. I guess they support Osteen. Gotta get them dollars, too.
In addition to preaching in a motivational style, Osteen also preaches the
Yeah, see, that's so weird. Yeah, Mark says he can harbor doubts about a Muslim soul, but not about a Christian white nationalist violent actions. Like, literally going out there, being pricks, and murdering people. Just because, I don't know, they didn't get enough hugs as children, or maybe too many hugs.
Prosperity gospel. Now, I've spoken a fair bit about the prosperity gospel here before, but let's break it down briefly for those of you who may not be familiar with the concept. The prosperity gospel, also known as the health and wealth gospel or the word of faith movement, is a concept that if you just believe in God hard enough and have enough faith in him, you'll be rewarded with health and wealth. This ideology has gained a massive following through televangelism and Oral Roberts, a father of the movement, who oversaw a ministry that brought in $110 million in annual revenue at the height of his influence. The Gospel Coalition argues that preachers who support the prosperity gospel will often have an absence of scripture, tensions, and serious doctrines within their teaching.
Interesting.
Now, there are individuals and articles that call out Osteen's teaching for being anti-gospel, twisting the Bible to suit his narrative and things of that nature.
They act like Joel Osteen or Osteen. It's like Osteen, Olstein. Okay, everybody practice with me. Osteen, 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 Osteen. No. Anyways, what was I saying? his anti-gospel message, yeah, they act like he's not the first one who's tried to do that before.
I'm not going to argue for or against how you view his interpretation of the Bible, and your beliefs surrounding that are up to you. Instead, I want to focus on his objectively wrong teachings, like when Osteen tells his followers that prayer and faith can essentially make them rich. Osteen wrote in his book, Next Level Thinking, quote, "If you do your part, God will do his. He will promote you. He'll give you an increase."
An increase of what? Because the only increase I've gotten recently is an increase in rent.
Another strange message he promotes is that you should attempt to be around more wealthy people, like saying misery loves company, but in reverse, like if you hang around money, it loves company too, I guess. Joel has told his congregation, quote, "If you're struggling in your finances, get around blessed people, generous people, people who are well off." Osteen does quote scripture
just get some rich friends
as well when he tells his congregation that
I don't want rich friends. No.
If they tithe and give offerings, God will pour out a blessing for them. A blessing so powerful that they won't have room to receive all the good things God has in store. Things like promotions, raises, people who don't like them being nice to them suddenly, superpowers, good things happening to them. Okay, I'm kind of kidding about the superpowers, but on a serious note, Osteen won't demand money from you. Instead, he's playing a carefully crafted game of if you give to God, you'll be blessed, making these carefully worded promises to these congregation members. Whether or not all of them listen, I've got no idea, but enough do that Osteen's church brought in $89 million in 2017. Over 90% of that was from church followers, and while some of his members
the church's income was $89 million in the year. Then, by contrast, Lakewood spent $1.2 million, barely 1% of its budget, on charitable causes. Dude, Mormonism does the same shit. Everyone's like, oh, the Mormons, they're so charitable, they take care of people. It's like, but you have to realize how cheaply they go about it. It's all for show. They make more money than they spend doing their charitable bullshit things.
Tithe, Osteen's church certainly doesn't. It only spent a measly $1.2 million on charitable causes. How is it that members are told to give whatever they can to God and they'll be rewarded, but the church hoards that wealth? Don't they want to be rewarded by God too? There's been a fair bit of speculation as to where this money goes as well. Osteen used to have a $200,000 salary, which feels excessive, but all right. But he allegedly stopped taking that.
But okay.
Why would he need to when he makes around $70 million between book sales, speaking fees, and his radio show? Of course, the numbers vary depending on what source you go to, and there's not a lot of reputable sources to report on Osteen's wealth. The most recent number that I found estimates that he has around $100 million to his name. And despite all this wealth, he still heavily relied on his congregation to pay for renovations to the church, reminding them that this would be a gift in addition to their tithing.
Oh, just like the Mormon church will have its own members clean the church, even though they could easily hire an actual janitorial service, because it's like, members should volunteer to clean the church and scrub toilets and vacuum and dust and all that stuff, because, you know, that's what you do. Like, you give your time and service, and then you'll get blessings. Really, it's just a nice way for the Mormon church to get free labor. Literal free labor of getting their churches cleaned. And people will have to bring their own cleaning supplies, buy their own stuff. Plus give them 10% of their income, and plus give them their time. It keeps getting more and more and more and more. Sorry, I'm kind of stuffy. I have struggled with allergies, so sometimes I feel like really plugged up.
A $105 million renovation, by the way. Some insist that this isn't just excessive, but it's wrong for Osteen to use church money to promote his books. Ultimately, whatever, he writes a book about and he has multiple bestsellers out, that money goes directly into his pocket. So, using nonprofit, non-tax congregation money to support his for-profit endeavors doesn't seem ethical to me. Unless the money from his books is going back to the church or towards a charity, this doesn't feel right. I wish I could say more about it and know exactly what those percentages are, but as churches don't have to file this info the same way a for-profit business does, I can't really know for sure what these numbers are. Insider has speculated on what may or may not be true as to Osteen's taxes, writing that though the claims Osteen owns a Ferrari were debunked and debated, he does have to pay taxes on his book income. He and his wife also paid $247,000 in property taxes in 2017, and their home is worth roughly $12 million. Osteen has insisted that there's nothing wrong with being wealthy so long as you put God first. Yet in an interview with
I know, but when you make God and money synonymous and just like you constantly blur the lines between God and money, it's like he's worshiping money. That's it. Money is the God here. Money is always the God. Money is always the true God to humanity. Ladies and gentle genders.
Oprah, where he reiterates there's nothing wrong with wealth, he says that he's actively trying to be the opposite of a negatively stereotyped televangelist, slick and after people's money. Now, if you're trying so hard to prove that you're not after people's money, why have a $12 million mansion? Like, just curious. We don't ask for money, and people send in millions of dollars to help us keep the broadcast on air, he told Oprah, adding that we're big givers.
They do ask for money, though.
And he is right by technicality. He doesn't downright ask for money. But by preaching the prosperity gospel, he is implying that God will bless his congregation's lives if they bless God by opening their wallets. And I know there are some naysayers out here that are going, but Blair.
Why would God need our money, though? That's so funny. Can't God make his own money?
$1.2 million is a lot to give to charity. And you're right, it is. But it dwarfs in comparison to what the church actually earns. Some sources even place their budget for weekly services at $31.7 million. Night of Hope events are $6.7 million. Administrative is $11.5 million. So is the priority really helping others here? Because those numbers don't really seem in line with each other when you compare it to what the church is actually donating. Well, let's take a look at one of Osteen's most controversial moments to see just how much help his church actually offers. And before we jump into that controversy, let's just take a quick moment to thank today's sponsors. You know what's really great about having your own business? It's being able to do things on your own time, being able to organize things the way you want. But the downside of it is sometimes some of the processes and things you have to do are a little bit cathartic. One of those things is how shipping labels are actually created. Shipping labels can be
we're watching an ad. I don't want to watch an ad. Sorry.
Stress-free shipping, and it's free to try.
So,
Hurricane Harvey devastated tens of thousands of folks in Texas and Louisiana. Lakewood Church, which is...
Sorry, I totally spaced out for like 30 seconds. I'm like, wait a minute, this is an ad. Sorry. I'm here, everybody.
...is based in Houston, seemed poised to help as it had a whopping 16,000 seats in its arena. Yet, this megachurch seemed far from eager to offer aid, even though other churches in the area, like the Islamic Society for Greater Houston, were opening their doors. The hurricane hit on Friday, and according to The Guardian, that weekend, people were leaping to help and even mattress shops opened their doors to become shelters. But Lakewood didn't begin operating as a large-scale shelter until the following Tuesday. Andy Oswa told The Guardian, quote, "A church like..."
I like this. She's kind of going over all the details, or all the points that the other guy went through. Only the other one we watched, it was a lot more simplified. What I love about her, and I highly encourage you all to follow, it's Illuminati with double eyes on each end. She's really good, and she's got so many other videos that I highly recommend watching. She's very good at putting together information and explaining the ethics of business practices and religions and this, that, and the other.
With this mode of preaching, it's supposed to be one of the first to open. When they did finally open, he stated, "This is just a last resort. They've got to. Normally they're supposed to know what to do. This is what I'm saying about humanity."
Yeah, heretical response. So it's like her name is Illuminati, but it's like two eyes on each end, and it's kind of spelled like naughty, the word naughty. And then it's just, this gal, each video, she's got her triangle head, and sometimes she's got like this cute little dog too. And that's her aesthetic and how she presents her things, and she just does it by voice and appears as a character. And then she'll have her fans will send in fan art sometimes, and she'll choose like a piece of fan art to feature every video. It's really cool. I love the aesthetic, honestly. It's really fun.
You don't need to be pressurized to do...
Yes, Mark, the faceless voice of reason. Exactly. I love it.
...something.
She's fabulous.
It did seem like Osteen and his church just caved and opened as a shelter because they needed to, and because of the backlash and criticism they were receiving. People tweeted that Joel Osteen won't open his church that holds 16,000 to hurricane victims because it only provides shelter from taxes, and others called him a prosperity gospel peddler. When Lakewood finally did open, by the way, Osteen insisted that the reason they had waited so long was because they had a flooding problem of their own. There are some photos of the church that seem to confirm this, but on the other hand, church spokesman Don Eloff contradicts this and told the Washington Post, quote, "This is crazy. People are saying we've locked the church. The church has been open from the beginning, but it's not designated as a shelter." Well, which is it then? Was the church open from the start, or was it delayed in opening because of supposed flooding? It certainly doesn't help Osteen's case that other pictures on social media showed the loading docks and parking lot areas at his megachurch not flooded at all, suggesting that the church absolutely could have taken people in sooner.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. It's so, I mean, it's for a guy who's not really saying much, you know, as far as like really saying concrete, like hardcore things like these people are going to go to hell or these people are going to go there, still says it without saying it. And in a way, it's like what he doesn't say and what he doesn't do that speaks far louder than the other shit that he's actually saying. Denying people help when he could have jumped in, and then by very loosely condoning neo-Nazis.
Others stated that Osteen could have taken people into his 10 million...
Yeah, he changed his mind, certainly. God gave me a message. He said I should let you all in now. Listen, the newspaper, God...
$1 home, as he'd certainly have the space to help people out, but he tweeted about offering prayers instead. Imagine surviving through a difficult hurricane, being uprooted, and then the leader of a closed-doors megachurch tells you they're just offering their prayers. Are you insulted yet? Good, because it gets worse. In the aftermath of this very public
I couldn't even answer.
Osteen wanted to move
I
on.
am insulted.
He claimed to be a victim of misinformation.
That was really funny of her to do.
Just a few weeks after the storm,
Are you
though,
insulted?
Osteen
Good.
preached what must have been the most tone-deaf and insulting message to his congregation.
That is insulting.
To not have a poor old me mentality when bad things happen.
Yeah, and like I said before, I hate that shit. It's like, yeah, we're all gonna have our moments of suffering. You don't have to, like, joyously like it. Like, suffering is not an indication that you're doing things wrong, necessarily. It's just, it's a part of life. At times we suffer, at times we don't. It's what you do with the suffering that really matters in the end, like how you transform it into power. This is just like, well, just be happy.
And I'm sure that's very easy for Osteen to say in his $12 million home. But when thousands of people suffered through the storm, it did come across as insensitive, to say the least. As he did discuss the church's handling of Hurricane Harvey at the time, he insisted that he was just being precautious. It's not as if this message had a terrible timing either. With Hurricane Harvey still fresh in his mind, Osteen told people to not think poor old me during the midst of their troubles. I can't say I'm surprised, but I'm definitely disappointed. And here's the kicker. You'd think, oh, this is a one-off, like it's bad, it's really shitty, but it can't get worse.
Yes,
you're wrong.
Yes, Mark. When you can afford to fly a jetpack over a natural disaster, you're not allowed to be an ass about other people's suffering. Seriously, it's like, shut up. Just the least he could have done was just shut up.
Insert 2021. There were some allegations that Lakewood Church did the same thing just last year in 2021 when Texas faced that winter storm and freezing temperatures. However, news sources such as Reuters claim that these allegations were false and the Lakewood Church was designated as a warming shelter for those in need. It does seem like Osteen and Lakewood learned a little bit about opening their doors from Hurricane Harvey. Still, when things like this happen, it's hard to know if he changed because he wanted to be more ready to help the community or if it's because Lakewood didn't want to find itself in the center of another controversy. Unfortunately, the attitude around natural disasters isn't the only thing that has made people wonder if Lakewood really gives a fuck about other people. Pardon my French.
No, that was beautiful. Rarely does she say fuck.
In late 2020, it received $4.4 million from COVID-19 federal aid. You know, the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP?
Right.
The thing is, Osteen is a televangelist. He already has the means to just broadcast his sermon far and wide and still reach anyone that wants to hear his message. If any church was going to receive this money, in my opinion, it should have been small churches that are genuinely struggling and could potentially use the funds.
I feel so dumb right now. I'm just getting it's just evangelists, but with like TV. Like, duh. Duh, Jan. Okay. Well, now I know. I now know that. I see the light. It's entering my eyes.
Funds to get equipment they need in order to keep in touch with their congregation. But what makes this all the worse is that Lakewood officials said that they hadn't applied for this loan in the first place. The same spokesperson we heard from a moment ago, David Eloff, told the press, believing the shutdown would only last a few weeks, Lakewood did not initially apply for PPP assistance during the first half of the program. However, as the shutdown persisted month after month, given the economic uncertainty, Lakewood finally applied for the PPP loan and has been able to provide full salaries and benefits, including health insurance coverage for all its employees and their families. And I just find it so freaking hard that Lakewood would have been unable to do this without a PPP loan. Have they so poorly managed their money that they just didn't have any of that money lying around with an annual, like, $90 million left?
Yeah, why do they need the relief when they can still, like, do all their shit online and everything? That doesn't even make any fucking sense to me.
Left over? Like, maybe it's just me. It doesn't add up to me.
No, it doesn't add up to me either.
You make $90 million a year,
yeah,
yet you couldn't pay your employees' salaries?
Yeah, that's sus. That's mega sus. That's a mega church sus.
It's weird to me. Is much of this just Lakewood being one of the worst financial planners I've ever seen? I don't know. But regardless, it's pretty convenient that Lakewood suddenly decided they could afford to pay back the loan once they received criticism. I do want to mention that no, Osteen and Lakewood weren't alone in this. Other megachurches applied for these loans too. While you might say that this is disgusting, others claim that this was simply inevitable. Some articles wrote that even through the potential for government audits that was supposed to curb the abuse, the Trump administration's favor for these churches was quite apparent. Of course, while some call it favor, others may call it downright corruption. The Freedom from Religion Foundation released the audio of 2 phone calls between religious leaders and the White House. In it, these officials secretly worked to give church leaders special access to PPP, ensuring they could receive top dollars from U.S. taxpayers. I highly recommend that you check out the FFRF article and phone calls if you feel like banging your head against the wall for a couple hours, because that's what I did. Now, the thing is, as much as I dislike Osteen for taking advantage of this corrupt system,
yes,
I will admit that seeing this evidence from FFRF makes it seem like a case of don't hate the player, hate the game. What I really dislike, more than Osteen and Lakewood and any other televangelist church, are the laws that we have surrounding televangelism and the special treatment these megachurches receive.
Yeah, what's going on today?
Now, there have been a few other controversies around Osteen and Lakewood, some of which have been pretty minor, at least in my opinion. For instance, when Osteen's son graduated from the University of Texas, they posed doing a hook 'em horn sign or a longhorn football hand signal, and that made people say that he
horns in the
putting on
chat.
devil
Horns in the
which
chat.
I think is kind of stupid, but hey,
it
people like to be
horns in the chat.
In another more serious incident, a church representative allegedly grabbed a child safety seat with an 18-month girl in it and
This is like what's insane. What the fuck is going on here? What is happening? What is happening?
Threw the seat off of a church pew. The representative fled the scene after the child landed face first on the floor, suffering bodily injury.
What? What? Who does that?
And the case was
Sorry, I just short-circuited there. It's so fucking unbelievable.
Settled for $15,000. I don't blame Osteen or the church itself, as there's not a lot of information here, so I don't know if this was malicious, an accident, due to a lack of training, or anything of that nature. Although I don't...
Nobody needs to be trained on how not to pick up a fucking baby and throw it. Nobody needs training for that. Nobody, and if they do, they should not be in public. They really shouldn't. Nobody needs training for that. Like,
know how you could train that level of common sense into someone if it wasn't
Thank
already
you.
there. Maybe that's mean of me to say, but I just
no.
like I know people don't like it when I bring up that I don't like children, but like it's not hard as someone who doesn't like children and doesn't want them to be like, hey, wow, that's like an 18-month-old baby. You know what I shouldn't do? Fucking chuck it across a floor. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why that's not common
Yeah.
sense. But I digress. Now, the
Thank
reason
you.
people seem to
No,
have so
that's
many
not
mixed
mean.
feelings about Osteen isn't for any one particular instance, though. Instead, it seems to be
Oh my lord, Ven Winter, now I want to see it, how not to throw a baby trading video, for fuck's sakes.
what he stands for. An Inc. contributor wrote that even though Osteen has chosen to be a man of God and speak Jesus' gospel, he doesn't live a life that Jesus would choose. Yet, this writer also defends Osteen, claiming that those that criticize him may be envious and malicious themselves. Maybe that's true for some, but I believe there's a lot of legitimate reasons to disagree with him. And for the record, he seems like you could have a cup of coffee with him and he might be a decent dude. But even if he's
So?
decent, the organization he runs seems to have some not great values, and I think that's worth criticizing. Now, as we've seen, some Christians disagree with Osteen because of the way he treats scripture as a watered-down gospel or like a cotton candy version. Others, whether inside or outside the faith, don't like his take on the actual devil or actual evil, calling it different instead of, white supremacist violence or whatever the bad thing might be. Or maybe you dislike him because of his hypocritical wealth. That's where most of my critique lies on.
We hate it all. We hate it all.
Honestly, taking
All of us hate everything.
tithes while his own church doesn't do the same. But I'm curious what you think. How do you feel about Joel Osteen? And with that,
How do I feel about Joel Osteen? I think all the points that we hit tonight were really good. I mean, I don't like him for any one of these. I don't like the focus on money. I don't like the negligence and or just the inability to just man up and fucking say something substantial. Like, he's just, like I said, was something like, what was he? He's like a fart and a piece of string. Like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing to him. And it's so weird because he doesn't even have that crazy preaching, like, thing about him. I think Jesus would be very uncomfortable in a megachurch. Yeah. I would be uncomfortable in there. Run for your lives from megachurches. I don't know. It's almost like, it's like anti-Christian Christianity. It's really weird. It's like dark Christianity, even though, I don't know, Christianity, all of it's evil in my eyes. But hey. So, anyways. Alright, my friends, let's wrap this up. Go to Big Face, pull up the chat. We now have introduced Joel Osteen, and we will continue to take a look at what Joel Osteen is going to be doing in the future. So, but we got our introduction down. I like going through and sort of like introducing you all to these public figures. That's why I'm just kind of doing this generally, so that when something new happens, like, we can just, like, go visit that and be like, oh, yeah, oh, Joel Osteen just did something messed up. Oh, yeah, we know about him. Go check out, like, this live stream where we, like, learned about him and talked about him, and especially, it's definitely not helpful for humanity as a whole. It doesn't really seem like this guy is focused on helping people. It just seems like he's running a business. And anyways, thank you for coming. Hello, Perry. Good to see you. Mark, thank you so much for coming and moderating, keeping our chat room safe. We got Katrina, thank you so much for coming. Heretical Response, pleasure as always. Cassidy, Claudia, Zero. Laura, good to see you, Laura. And thank you, Claudia and Rebecca and Laura LaFleur. Thank you all for your donations. Oh, I think Claudia just subscribed. But thank you anyways. Yeah, Rebecca and Laura, thank you so much for your donations and your nice notes that you left. If you can tip, if any of you all can tip, it's really helpful. Just go to mindfulmonad.com. You can get a shirt there. You can leave a tip. Cassie, you came right at the end. Thank you, Cassie, for coming. And tipping really helps. Tipping helps me continue my work and thrive and survive. But it's not always, like, it's not mandatory. Like, I mean, if you can do it, that's great. Like, I totally love that. But, like, don't ever feel like you have to do that. Sharing the live streams and inviting other people to come in, that really helps. Liking the stream. If you guys haven't liked the stream, please hit the like button right now. And, hey, Pooks. And, yeah, I also have my Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/JenEricksonOfficial, you can get access to our Discord server there, where you can talk to me a little bit more personally and send me links to stuff to watch or to people to review. In fact, Friday, we got to figure out what we're going to watch on Friday. I want to do something like really cool. We have done Bible Man twice now. I don't know if you guys want to keep on doing Bible Man or if we should check out some other ridiculous stuff. That's the opportunity in our Discord server where you can talk to me, you can share links, and you can suggest things. That's what all patrons can do. So, yes. Next, I believe Morg is going live. I think at 6:30 usually. And I will be there moderating, so if you all are going there, I will see you there as well. Anyways, thank you so much. We'll see you Wednesday. We're going to talk about, we're going to be talking about some recent, very serious things going on with the backlash against non-binary people. There's a lot going on, and I would like to tackle a lot of it as somebody who is non-binary and has I have people in my life that I really care about who are non-binary as well, so it's a really important topic to me. I'm very passionate about trans rights and trans issues, and being there to help carve our space out. Anyways, see you all later. Good to see you. Take care. Goodbye. Also, I need to update this list of people, so if you don't see your name, don't worry, I will be updating it very shortly.